What started as a routine on-camera conversation didn't just go left. It detonated into one of the most intense celebrity confrontations in recent memory. The cameras never cut, and that's what makes this moment so explosive. Because what unfolded wasn't polished, scripted, or controlled. It was raw, unpredictable, and impossible to ignore. In the now viral clip spreading across every corner of social media, Ray J can be seen visibly agitated, his tone shifting in real time from sharp frustration to outright hostility. And then, without warning, he directs that energy straight at Kron and Mayessa in a way that catches everyone off guard, including the people standing just feet away. What was supposed to be a normal discussion instantly turns into a heated verbal clash. Ray J doesn't hold back. He accuses them of rewriting history, of moving differently behind the scenes, and of playing both sides for years. The words aren't vague. They're pointed, deliberate, and loaded with tension that clearly didn't start in that room. And just when it feels like it can't escalate any further, it does. Because according to insiders, this wasn't a sudden outburst. This was pressure that had been building quietly for weeks, maybe even longer. The difference is, no one expected it to erupt like this, and definitely not on camera. Within seconds, the entire energy of the room shifts. Conversations die mid-sentence. People exchange looks. The atmosphere becomes thick with tension, like something is seconds away from crossing a line no one can come back from. And then comes the moment that takes everything to another level. A name gets mentioned, Shyne, and suddenly, this isn't just about a disagreement anymore. It opens the door to a deeper history, one tied to past alliances, unspoken betrayals, and long-standing speculation that fans have only ever pieced together from the outside. Now the internet is doing what it does best, breaking everything down in real time. Clips are circulating, reactions are pouring in, and everyone is picking sides. Some believe Ray J finally said what others were too careful to say publicly. Others think this was calculated, a strategic move designed to expose something much bigger beneath the surface. And that's the question no one can seem to agree on. Was this an emotional breaking point, or was it intentional? To understand why this moment hit as hard as it did, you have to go back years, long before the cameras were rolling. Ray J has built a reputation on being outspoken, unpredictable, and unfiltered. He's never been the type to stay quiet when he feels disrespected. Over time, that energy has become part of his identity. He doesn't just respond to tension, he leans into it. And when pushed, he doesn't hesitate to make things public. On the other side, Kron and Mayessa aren't just artists, they've evolved into influential voices in media. Their opinions carry weight. Their platforms amplify narratives, and with that comes power, the power to shape perception. But beneath the polished interviews and public discussions, there's been a quieter tension brewing. Subtle disagreements, competitive energy, different views on loyalty, success, and authenticity in an industry where perception is everything. Then there's Shyne, a name that brings its own history. His journey from rising artist to a figure shaped by controversy, absence, and reinvention adds another layer to this already complex dynamic. His presence in the conversation, even indirectly, hints at connections and unresolved issues that go far beyond what's been publicly discussed. For years, these names have existed in the same orbit, crossing paths through interviews, collaborations, and mutual circles, but never colliding like this. And that's what makes this moment different. Because when tension stays unspoken for too long, it doesn't disappear. It builds, quietly, until eventually something triggers it, and when it comes out, it doesn't come out controlled. According to sources close to the situation, conversations about respect, credit, and narrative control have been happening behind the scenes for a while. Comments made in interviews were taken as indirect shots. Business ties created friction that never fully got resolved, and in recent months, that tension had been getting harder to ignore. Ray J, in particular, had reportedly been growing more vocal in private, frustrated with what he felt were misleading portrayals tied to his name and legacy. At the same time, Kron and Mayessa continued expanding their presence in media, engaging in discussions that occasionally touched on sensitive industry history. And that's what makes this situation so volatile. Because these aren't just entertainers, they're storytellers. And when storytellers clash, it's not just personal, it becomes public narrative. So when everything finally collided in that room, it wasn't random. It was the result of years of overlapping history, unresolved tension, and rising pressure that had nowhere else to go. Witnesses say the signs were there even before it exploded. Subtle remarks, body language, the kind of small signals that hint something bigger is coming. But no one expected it to unfold like this. And maybe that's the most telling part. Everyone involved understands the weight of public image. They know what's at stake, which means for things to break down this openly, this aggressively, whatever triggered Ray J in that moment wasn't small. It was something he felt strongly enough about to risk everything in real time. Now, as more details begin to surface, one thing is clear. This wasn't just a viral argument. It was the surface crack of something much deeper. And if this is only the beginning, then what comes next could reveal even more about the tensions that have been building behind the scenes for years. The tone didn't just shift, it cut deep. What started as tension quickly turned personal, and according to those in the room, the atmosphere froze almost instantly. Conversation stopped, eyes locked. No one wanted to interrupt what was clearly building into something bigger than a disagreement. Cameron, known for his calm but razor-sharp responses, reportedly pushed back in a controlled but pointed way, questioning Ray J's version of events and hinting that things were being taken out of context. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to keep the fire going. Meanwhile, Ma Dollar E initially appeared to step in with a different approach, trying to cool things down before it spiraled further. But the tension didn't ease. It climbed. Every sentence added weight. Every response felt like it carried years behind it. And then, just like that, the confrontation crossed a line no one in that room was prepared for. According to leaked snippets from people present, Ray J suddenly raised his voice, shifting from controlled frustration to direct accusation. He didn't speak in general terms anymore, he pointed fingers. He suggested that certain people in the room had been moving strategically behind the scenes in ways that weren't honest, weren't transparent, and definitely weren't what they appeared to be publicly. That's when everything changed. This was no longer a debate, it was a collision. Phones quietly came out. Recordings started, some openly, some discreetly. You could feel it. People knew this moment wasn't staying in that room. Whispers spread as reality set in. This was about to go public. And then came the moment that truly shook everything. In the middle of the argument, Ray J reportedly brought up Shyne, not casually, not in passing, but in a way that immediately altered the tone of the entire exchange. That name carried weight. It pulled in history, real history, past alliances, unresolved issues, and connections that had never fully been explained publicly. Witnesses say the shift was instant. Body language changed. Faces tightened. The reactions from Cameron and Ma Dollar E reportedly became more serious, more focused, like something deeper had just been touched. In that moment, the conversation stopped being about opinions and turned into something far more layered. A clash of loyalty, history, and long-standing tension that had been buried beneath years of silence. And then came the twist no one saw coming. Instead of stepping back, Ray J doubled down. He pushed further, harder. He began implying that there were conversations, real conversations, that the public had never heard, situations that had been kept quiet. That single implication shifted the energy into dangerous territory. Because now, it wasn't just about what was being said, it was about what could be said next. The room went still, completely still. Every person there understood the stakes. Say too much and something bigger gets exposed. Hold back and the tension keeps building. And just when it seemed like the moment had reached its peak, a response, reportedly aimed directly at Ray J's accusations, shifted the entire direction again. Suddenly, this wasn't just one argument. It felt like multiple timelines, rivalries, and unresolved issues were colliding all at once. That's when it hit everyone in the room. This wasn't a moment anymore. It was a turning point, something that was about to spill far beyond those walls into the public in a way no one could control. And somehow, it still didn't stop there. According to multiple sources, after the initial clash, the tension didn't settle, it intensified. Witnesses say Ray J's energy changed again, this time becoming fully assertive, almost relentless. He began introducing claims that hinted at deeper behind-the-scenes issues, questions of trust, loyalty, and who's really controlling the narratives people believe. But what truly caught everyone off guard were the details that followed. Insiders described them as unexpected, unprompted, and potentially explosive. Ray J allegedly started referencing situations that had never been publicly connected before, linking conversations from different eras, different circles, as if they were all part of a larger, hidden pattern. That's when people in the room started realizing this wasn't just personal anymore. This was touching something bigger, something structural within the industry itself. Then came the second wave of escalation. Leaked chatter from people claiming to be nearby suggests Ray J implied that certain individuals had been positioning themselves strategically in media spaces, shaping conversations, influencing narratives, and ultimately controlling how the public sees certain stories. That claim alone was enough to send shockwaves beyond the room. Because within minutes, clips started appearing online. Some were blurry, some incomplete, but they didn't need to be perfect, they just needed to exist. And once they did, everything exploded. Timelines flooded instantly, especially on Twitter, where threads began dissecting every second. One post read, "This didn't just happen, this has been building." Another claimed, "Ray J said too much. This is bigger than what we're seeing." And just like that, the internet went into investigation mode. Old interviews resurfaced. Podcast clips got replayed. Subtle comments that once seemed harmless suddenly carried new meaning. Anonymous accounts claiming insider knowledge started dropping updates, suggesting that tensions over media narratives and industry commentary had been brewing long before this moment, but were never addressed publicly. Fan pages took it even further. Frame-by-frame breakdowns, body language analysis, pauses, reactions, eye contact, everything was being examined like evidence. And then, just as things reached a boiling point online, one name started trending again: Shyne. The connection wasn't confirmed, but it didn't need to be. The speculation alone was enough to ignite another wave of theories, pulling even more attention into the situation. Industry commentators began stepping in, some arguing that this wasn't just drama, it was a reflection of a deeper issue. In today's entertainment world, where media platforms, personal branding, and historical narratives overlap, conflicts like this aren't just personal, they're amplified. Others pointed out how quickly private tension can become public chaos in an era where every moment can be recorded, uploaded, and analyzed in real time. But then came the most unsettling detail of all. An audio snippet, leaked anonymously, began circulating. In it, a voice believed to be from the room reacts in real time, expressing shock at how fast everything escalated and suggesting this wasn't supposed to go that far. If that audio is real, it changes everything, because it implies that while the confrontation may not have been planned once it started, no one could control it. Now, with conflicting narratives forming, new details surfacing, and millions of people watching every development, one question remains at the center of it all. Was this a spontaneous emotional explosion, or the exposure of something much deeper that's been quietly shaping interactions behind the scenes for years? Because based on the reactions, the leaks, and the way this story keeps evolving, one thing is clear: this isn't over, not even close. And whatever comes next might not just add to the story, it could completely change it. The internet didn't just react to this confrontation, it split clean in half. Within minutes of the clip surfacing, hashtags started climbing rapidly, and two completely opposite narratives formed around what people thought they had just witnessed. On one side, supporters of Ray J defended his actions. They argued he was out of control. He was finally saying out loud what others had avoided for years. In their eyes, this wasn't chaos, it was accountability. They praised him for confronting what they believe are long-standing inconsistencies in how certain industry stories have been told, insisting he chose honesty over silence, regardless of the backlash that would follow. But the other side saw something very different. Critics called the entire confrontation unnecessary, unprofessional, and dangerously escalated for no reason. Some even suggested it crossed into performative territory, arguing that instead of resolving anything, it turned a serious discussion into public chaos. According to them, whatever point Ray J was trying to make got buried under the intensity of the delivery. Meanwhile, supporters of Cameron and Ma Dollar E pushed back just as strongly. They highlighted their long-standing presence in hip-hop culture and media, arguing that their commentary isn't random opinion. It's built on experience, history, and first-hand understanding of the industry. Fans pointed to years of interviews and podcast moments as proof that their perspectives carry weight beyond social media debate. And then the internet did what it always does when a moment gets big enough. It dissected everything. Short-form platforms like TikTok and YouTube Shorts became investigation hubs. Every clip was slowed down, zoomed in, and replayed frame by frame. People analyzed facial expressions, tone changes, pauses, and body language as if they were decoding hidden messages beneath every word spoken in that room. Some users insisted the reactions from certain individuals suggested deeper awareness of unresolved issues. Others pushed back hard, saying the internet was overanalyzing a situation that was already being blown out of proportion. At the same time, entertainment channels and commentary creators began framing the confrontation as one of the most unexpected celebrity clashes of the moment. Not just because of who was involved, but because of how quickly it escalated in real time. Industry voices also started weighing in carefully, without directly naming names. The general discussion pointed toward a familiar pattern in entertainment. When strong personalities with powerful platforms collide, disagreements don't stay private for long. They expand, multiply, and get reshaped by public interpretation. Some analysts emphasized how media narratives and personal branding often overlap in unpredictable ways, turning private tension into public discourse almost instantly. Others highlighted something even more critical: the speed at which digital platforms can turn a moment into a global debate before any facts are fully confirmed. Then came another layer that pushed speculation even further: the continued online discussion around Shyne. Even without direct confirmation of involvement, the mere mention of his name in connection to the confrontation fueled theories about deeper historical context, past alliances, and unresolved industry history that fans believe may still be influencing present-day tensions. Some users even began constructing timelines, connecting old interviews, archived clips, and past public statements, trying to piece together a broader narrative that could explain why this particular exchange escalated so sharply. But despite all the analysis, one thing became undeniable. This wasn't just a celebrity argument anymore. It had transformed into a full-scale public debate. A debate about truth versus perception, about loyalty versus narrative control, about who gets to shape the story and who gets challenged when that story is questioned. And yet, even with all the commentary, breakdowns, and theories, there was still no clear resolution. No official statement fully explained what triggered the confrontation. No unified version of events emerged, and no side fully stepped back from their position. Instead, the situation did the opposite. It grew. More clips, more reactions, more interpretations, more speculation. Because in the digital age, moments like this don't fade, they multiply. And the audience doesn't just watch the story unfold anymore, they become part of how it spreads. Which leads to the one question nobody can seem to answer. What actually triggered this confrontation in the first place? And what part of the story still hasn't been revealed? Because based on everything circulating online, one thing is clear. What people saw was only the surface. And just as the conversation seemed like it might settle, a new wave of alleged leaks pushed everything in a different direction again. Anonymous messages began circulating in private groups and niche forums, suggesting that the confrontation may not have been entirely spontaneous. According to these claims, none of which are officially verified, there were conversations before the recorded moment that hinted tensions were already building. The most controversial claim, that the mention of Shyne wasn't random at all, but tied to deeper discussions about historical narratives, past relationships, and how certain events have been publicly interpreted over time. If even partially true, that would completely change how the confrontation is understood. Because it would mean this wasn't just a reaction to the present, it was a clash shaped by the past. And according to one anonymous insider quote circulating online, the moment people saw wasn't the beginning of the conflict. It was the moment everything that had been building finally spilled into public view. That idea alone has sparked a new wave of speculation, suggesting this wasn't a single argument, but the visible break in a much longer, more complicated chain of tension involving reputation, influence, and narrative control behind the scenes. Now, as more alleged details continue to surface, each one adding another layer instead of clarity, the situation is becoming harder to define, not easier. Because no central figure has fully clarified what happened, no definitive explanation has been released, and every new leak only raises more questions than it answers, which leaves the story in a very specific place, still unfolding, still incomplete, and still open to interpretation. So the real question now isn't just what happened in that room. It's what part of this story is still waiting to be revealed, and how different everything might look once it finally is. And that uncertainty is exactly what keeps pulling people back into the story. Because as long as there's no final explanation, every new clip, every new comment, and every alleged leak becomes evidence in someone's version of the truth. The situation stops being a single confrontation and turns into an ongoing narrative war, one where perception matters just as much as reality. Online, the discussion didn't slow down. If anything, it expanded. On Twitter, new threads kept appearing every hour. Some users insisted the entire incident was being misunderstood, arguing that edited clips and fragmented recordings were distorting the real sequence of events. Others pushed the opposite view, that what people saw was only a fraction of a much deeper conflict finally spilling into the open. Meanwhile, reaction content across TikTok and YouTube grew even more intense. Creators weren't just replaying the confrontation anymore, they were reconstructing it, mapping out who said what when body language changed, who reacted first, and what those micro moments might reveal about the underlying tension. But with every analysis, the gap between interpretation and fact grew wider. Because no matter how many breakdowns surfaced, none of them could fully confirm the same core question: what actually triggered the escalation in that exact moment? And that's where the speculation kept circling back to the same names, the same histories, and the same unresolved connections involving Ray J, Cameron, and Ma Dollar E, with the added layer of ongoing references tied to Shyne continuing to fuel deeper theories about long-standing industry narratives. But even as the internet tried to connect every piece, something important was becoming clearer in the background. No one directly involved had stepped in with a full, structured explanation. No full statement, no verified timeline, no unified account of what actually happened inside that room. And in the absence of clarity, speculation filled every gap. What started as a single confrontation had now evolved into something much larger, a public interpretation battle where each side was building its own version of events based on fragments, reactions, and heavily analyzed clips. And that's what made the situation so volatile. Because once a moment becomes public content, it stops belonging to the people in the room and starts belonging to everyone watching it. Still, even amid all the noise, one question continued to dominate every thread, every comment section, and every breakdown video. Was this truly a spontaneous emotional eruption? Or was it the visible crack in something that had been breaking for a long time beneath the surface? Some believe it was simply a clash of personalities that got out of control in real time, amplified by cameras, phones, and online reaction culture. Others believe something deeper finally surfaced. Years of tension, competing narratives, and unresolved history collapsing into a single moment that could no longer stay contained. And that divide is exactly why the story hasn't faded. Instead of dying down, it keeps evolving. Every new rumor adds another layer. Every alleged leak shifts the direction slightly. Every reaction reignites the debate. Because in situations like this, the event is only the beginning. The real story becomes what people believe happened afterward. And as long as there's no definitive closure, this confrontation remains open-ended, constantly rewritten by whoever speaks about it next. Which is why attention is already shifting toward what comes next. Insiders suggest that more reactions could surface soon, possibly from individuals directly or indirectly involved. There are also claims that additional footage or context may eventually emerge, which could either support or completely challenge the current narratives circulating online. But nothing is confirmed. And that uncertainty is exactly what keeps the momentum alive. Because at this point, the story isn't just about what happened in that room anymore. It's about what the public thinks happened, and how quickly that version of events can change when new information appears. So now the situation sits at a critical edge. One more detail could reinforce the current narrative, or completely flip it. And until that happens, the debate continues, louder, faster, and more divided than ever. Because this isn't just a confrontation anymore. It's an unfolding narrative that still hasn't reached its final chapter.